Welcome back to the Underground Football Podcast, a show where we talk about anything and everything NFL football from underground. Alongside my co host Jack Priller, I am Mike Maynard, and we're going to jump right in today's episode, which is on the 2022 Houston Texans and their outlook coming into this brand new season. We'll go over, our thoughts about them and if they've gotten better, if they've gotten worse, what we think they're going to do record-wise, if playoffs are in the picture. But to start, I'd like to talk to you, Priller. How you doing today? How we feeling about these Houston Texans? What's going on?
Mike, I'm having a great day today, honestly. But the Texans, they're on the other side of the picture. I don't really think the Texans are obviously going to be a good team this year. I think we're going to obviously see a bottom three team in the NFL, and so I'm kind of not really chomping at the bit to talk about this team in any situation. But it'll be an interesting topic to talk about today. I know there's a lot of Texans fans out there, so I'm here to just give them what they're here for. Some insight into their team.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. The Houston Texans, obviously, as of late, have not been too exciting to watch. Have not been, competing at a high level. So maybe looking to turn that around this season. But you're not obviously very high on them, and I'll spoil it now. I'm not very high on them either. But to start, we'll go over 2021, which was not a great season for the Houston Texans, going 4-13, giving them the number three overall pick in the draft, which it's been the first time in a while that they've had their first round pick. With the Laramie Tunsil trade, kind of ruining their draft capital for the last couple years. So this past season in 2022, just now getting their first round pick in a couple years and taking Mr. Derek Stingley Jr. in the first round with the third pick. So looking to be on the up and up, but this team has been rebuilding for a few years now, ever since losing, DeAndre Hopkins and now Deshaun Watson. This team's definitely in a rebuild mode, so getting their first round pick back was a nice addition, and they had two first round picks this past season, but I'll get into that in a second here. So 2021, like I said, 4-13 record, third in the AFC South, not doing very well. Not last in their division, but third last in the league, so not a great season. They had problems with Deshaun Watson holding out, and then legal trouble. He now is out of the building. Davis Mills will be your starting quarterback this season. He came over last year as a rookie and played at a pretty high level, but this team will be looking to hopefully turn things around. You bring in Levy Smith to be your head coach. David Culley didn't really work out in his one season as the head coach, so we'll see how things go there. But in free agency, you really only lose one player that deserves to be really gone in depth about, and that is Justin Reed, the safety um, that is now a Kansas City Chief. So losing him is going to be pretty big to this team. I mean, he wasn't going to make you a playoff team or anything, but he was a solid piece. 25 years old, nice young safety, playing at a high level. So he's now gone, unfortunately. But you're in a rebuild mode. You didn't want to pay a guy a ton of money, so understandable. But like I said with the draft, you draft Derek Stingley Jr. in the first round. You have two first round picks and take Kenyon Green, the offensive lineman out of Texas A&M, with the 15th pick. And second round, you take a safety, Jalen Petrie, who may be looking to take over that Justin Reed role, and John Mechie III, the wide receiver out of Alabama, in the second round at 44 as well, who has a little bit of injury problems, but we'll get into that. So overall, not a huge offseason for the Houston Texans here in 2022. Not a ton of moves, not a ton of losses, but not a ton of additions. So if you're good with it, Priller, we'll jump right into the quarterback position here. We'll go position by position, giving our thoughts on each group and how they stack up against the rest of the NFL.
Yeah,
So
I'm honestly ready to talk about Davis Mills. Yeah, you can
to
keep it rolling.
begin, we will talk about Davis Mills, the starting quarterback here for the Houston Texans. We went over our rankings of quarterbacks in previous episodes, and neither one of us had Davis Mills very high. Our co-host Quack had him a little bit higher than us, maybe a little bit higher hit on him just overall. But young guy, he's not going to be an athletic freak, but a young guy, 23 years old out of Stanford, third round pick last year in 2021. He came in his first season and did a pretty decent job. I mean, with what he had, he did all right. So you're not hoping for a ton out of Davis Mills. Not an athletic freak, doesn't have a crazy arm, isn't super mobile, but a big guy at 6'4", 225 that can, you know, not do terrible. And I don't know. There's not a lot to say about Davis Mills. He's not a great quarterback, but he's kind of your bridge guy that'll help this team kind of be in that rebuild situation. Young guy, not getting paid a lot of money to kind of just get you over to maybe finding that franchise quarterback in the near future. But what are your thoughts on Davis Mills and what he can do for this team in this upcoming season?
Obviously, like you touched on, not really the best quarterback. Obviously, Houston's not really looking to stay with him. You kind of mentioned him bringing a bridge quarterback to their future franchise QB. But yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up perfectly with Davis Mills kind of being that guy. And obviously, didn't bring them any good situations last year, losing a lot of games. So obviously, he hasn't proved that he is a great quarterback in this league. That you need your QB to kind of be that leader around the offense. He hasn't really shown that. Maybe this year, kind of knowing his role, knowing that he's going to be the starter week one, maybe he's probably prepared a little bit more. Obviously, last year he thought maybe Deshaun Watson was going to come in and he was going to step behind Deshaun Watson and kind of learn from him. But obviously that didn't happen, so he kind of got just thrown under the bus and had to get really right into it. But I think this year, Davis Mills kind of knows that he's going to be the leader of this offense. Maybe we could see a little step up of him moving, obviously a little bit higher up on me and Mike's boards, but I don't really know. Davis Mills, you kind of mentioned not really much to talk about this guy besides that he is young, and I mean he has that frame to maybe be a good quarterback in this league.
Yeah, so there's not a ton of upside with him. You look for quarterbacks to have that arm talent or that athleticism coming out, which he didn't really have. But he's a smart guy, can make the ball or put the ball in the right spot and won't lose you too many games single-handedly. But he's not really elevating his teammates very well and isn't capable of being the reason that you're leading a team to the playoffs or anything like that, as he kind of showed last season. So not a huge deal to talk about Davis Mills here, but we'll hop into the backups here. Kyle Allen has bounced around to a couple teams now. He started off with Carolina and went over to Washington for the past 2 seasons. Didn't really start. He started in Carolina in 2019. Didn't do a terrible job, but he's a backup. He's nothing crazy. Similar guy to Davis Mills. Not a phenomenal athlete, but you know pretty smart with the ball, doesn't turn it over too much, and he can come in a pinch and do a decent job. And then you have Jeff Driscoll as your third string guy. Who knows if he'll stay on the team? But again, bounced around to a couple teams. Cincinnati in 2018, Detroit in 2019, and Denver in 2020. And he's gonna be your third string guy. He's probably not gonna see the field unless barring a terrible injury bug here in Houston. But I think Jeff Driscoll, nothing special to talk about there. So overall, I think we're pretty low on this quarterback room. Not a ton of athleticism here, not a ton of upside, but you kind of we saw what we were gonna get out of Davis Mills, and that's a bottom half quarterback, but maybe not the worst in the league. And he isn't terribly inconsistent, but he's just consistently all right. So if you have anything to say about these backups, go ahead. I mean, this quarterback room as a whole, not a ton to talk about. I mean, I think that's going to be a common theme with most of this team, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, not much to note on these two backup QBs. Obviously, you kind of touched on them. I Jeff Driscoll, I don't think really he'll probably get cut when the season starts. But yeah, I mean these two, this second string Kyle Allen, I mean probably won't see the playing field. I think this is really just Davis Mills' team. So I mean, barring an injury, obviously, but yeah.
For sure. All right, we'll jump into running backs now. The running back room. I see mainly two or three guys here that are going to be your main runners of the football, and that being Mr. Marlon Mack, the former Indianapolis Colt, now comes over to Houston and has probably a lot better of a shot to have a role. Not with Jonathan Taylor on his team anymore, but he was pretty decent for Indianapolis. His first 5 years of his career had some injury problems as of late in the last 2 seasons. Hasn't played more than 6 games, so a rough 2 years. But coming over here to Houston, having a bigger workload possibly should be a nice change for him. but you saw him have a decent year in 2019, playing 14 games, having over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. So this guy's capable of being a lead back. He's only 26 years old. It feels like he's been in the league forever, but you know, he'll get to probably be the starter week one, I would think. And then you jump into the rookie running back drafted in the fourth round out of Florida, Damian Pierce, who I think definitely has a chance to take over as the starter as the year goes on. I think maybe starting out he might not, be your lead back, but they kind of have differing play styles. Marlon Mack being more of that elusive guy, and Damian Pierce being more that run right through you type of guy. Damian Pierce is 2 inches shorter at 5'10", Marlon Mack being 6 foot, but Damian Pierce weighs more by 6 pounds. So Damian Pierce is going to be more of that run through you type of guy, and Marlon Mack more of that break tackles, elusive guy to get around people. So there'll be a decent 1-2 punch, but I think Damian Pierce has a strong chance at taking over the backfield as time goes on. And then your third down pass catcher probably going to be Rex Burkhead, um, coming over from, you know, New England. He was pretty decent with Tom Brady over there. I mean, he wasn't the lead back by any means, but was able to do a pretty good job in the receiving game. And even last year, had 25 receptions for 186 yards in the receiving game for Rex Burkhead. So you're hoping that he can, come in when he needs to, and play his role, which isn't going to be a lot. And as a 32-year-old running back, you're not hoping for a ton of Rex Burkhead. Not a crazy athlete, but he can get open in the short passing game and maybe make a guy miss here and there. But I think it's three guys. This is probably one of the weaker running back rooms around the league, but Marlon Mack has upside, and I think Damian Pierce has upside as well. And Rex Burkhead's just going to play his role.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we're looking at probably the worst running back room out of this division. But Marlon Mack isn't that bad. I mean, honestly, you kind of mentioned his one season that he had right before he started getting injured a lot, where he had 1,000 yards. I mean, that's pretty good. Obviously, that's what you're kind of looking for in a lead back. I mean, I don't know how much the Houston Texans are going to look to kind of depend on their running backs this year, but Marlon Mack definitely could see. Um, obviously, the Texans could see a good production from Marlon Mack, obviously bringing him in, and I mean, yeah, Damian Pierce, with their rookie pick or with their pick that they picked Damian Pierce with, obviously we could see him kind of coming in as that second down or like that second string running back. I don't think Burkhead is really going to be in the picture so much because you kind of touched on him being his age being a factor. I think they're kind of going to want this younger guy with the good, like you know what I mean, good health, to come in and kind of be that second down or that relieving running back for Marlon Mack. And I think Damian Pierce is going to be that guy that obviously you kind of mentions that third and short guy. Kind of put him in, just put his nose down and get through the line. And so I think he'll be a nice guy, a nice addition for this team. To obviously maybe be having more third down conversions. But yeah, Rex Burkhead, I'm not really high on. I think that he probably is going to be leaving the league pretty soon here. But yeah, I mean, being 32 years old at running back position, that's getting pretty old up in there and for that position group.
Yeah, I think it'll be a rough scene here for these guys. I mean, like you kind of touched on, these guys have some upside. They're decent at what they do, but none of them are their workhorse type of guys or your three down backs that are capable of doing everything. Marlon Mack being more your speed guy, elusive, and Damian Pierce not the fastest guy, running a 4.59 40, not your fastest straight line runner, but is a strong guy that can get between the tackles and get you a few extra yards after contact. And then Rex Burkhead, obviously, kind of losing a step possibly athletically, but he's never been, a crazy fast guy or anything like that. So this will be an interesting group. Um, but, I think those are your main three guys going into the season, and they're not going to be, losing you games. They're going to hold on to the ball. They're not going to fumble a ton. And Marlon Mack, we've seen can put it together. So we'll see how he comes back from injury. But it's an interesting group here. So I'll jump in now with the wide receiver group, who definitely has much more of a number one guy than the running backs. That being Brandon Cooks, the former first round pick. Has bounced around to a couple teams now. He played with the New Orleans Saints first 3 years of his career. Went to the Patriots for one season, um, and then went to the Rams for a couple seasons, and now has been with the Texans the past two seasons in 2020 and 2021. But you look at Brandon Cooks, he is the definition of consistency. This guy is a star in this league. He's probably the best player on this entire team, in my opinion. Um, I mean, you look at him, he's had six 1,000 yard receiving seasons out of his 8 seasons total. So this guy gets over 1,000 yards way more often than he doesn't. Even this past season with a rough quarterback situation with Davis Mills, still put up 1,037 yards and 6 touchdowns. So this guy's going to get the job done no matter who's throwing him the ball, no matter who's around him. Brandon Cooks is going to be your number one receiver, and I feel like you're pretty solid with him there. He's a great guy to have, super fast, obviously, great route runner. He can basically do it all. Shorter guy, 5'10", but he's able to get the job done. It feels like he's been in the league forever, like I said with Marlon Mack. But again, 28 years old. This guy's in the prime of his career. I don't see him falling off at all. So Brandon Cooks is a super nice number one receiver to have. What are your thoughts on him going into 2022?
I'm pretty sure the Texans actually extended him this year for a 2 year deal, and honestly, that's a perfect thing for Brandon Cooks. I think Brandon Cooks, obviously, you kind of mentioned in the prime of his career, hasn't really shown that much of a decline yet, and obviously, I don't think he is going to start. But yeah, I mean, he's just a solid wide receiver in the NFL. I mean, yeah, you kind of touched on his speed. Obviously, 5'10", 183 pounds. I mean, you're not really looking at him to like go up and moss people, but he will burn you over the top, and I think that's kind of a thing that would help this team, the Houston Texans. So I mean, Brandon Cooks, I'm definitely high on. You mentioned I'm really high on having like a nice wide receiver one, and obviously you kind of touched on it. Brandon Cooks is that guy for the Texans, so I'm kind of impressed with them kind of having their guy. Obviously that can cause problems with teams doubling Brandon Cooks, you know what I mean, or having someone overtop him to cover his deep threat ability. But I definitely think Brandon Cooks definitely obviously shown that he's been able to get open in coverage. So Brandon Cooks can't really say much negatives about him. I think he's a great wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, 100%. He's definitely the star of this offense. He's going to be basically your main producer here. So he may see double teams like you're saying, but he's that guy that can get production out even with a double team. But I like how you pointed out the extension. He's now your second highest paid player on the team with a 2 year, basically $40 million contract. So he'll be sticking around. And I think, maybe not the best spot for him. Maybe he could find a team, more ready to compete, but he's going to be your number one guy here. He's going to be the focal point of the offense. So, you know, that the Texans got to be happy with their number one wide receiver spot. But the drop off between him and your number two spot, I think, is, bigger than any team in the league at their, wide receiver one, drop off to wide receiver two. This is, astronomical in my opinion. Now, it's kind of a toss up for the next, three or so guys at who's going to be your quote unquote wide receiver two. You have basically, I think, three guys, I guess, being Nico Collins, Chris Conley, and Philip Dorsett. Um, each one of these guys hasn't really shown a ton as of yet in the NFL. I think Nico Collins is the youngest guy of the three by far at 23 years old, so he has probably the most upside. Um, but it'll be interesting to see where these guys kind of go. You were kind of hoping for John Mechie to be maybe your number two receiver drafted in the second round, but obviously that doesn't work out with him being out for the season. So you know, your eyes turn towards the rest of these guys who you're not super excited about. But Nico Collins, former third round pick last year in 2021 out of Michigan, 6'4", 250 15 pounds, so very big guy, can get those contested catches. Maybe not your best route runner, but this guy's able to bring the ball down at a pretty high rate. I mean, Brandon Cooks is your number one guy. So Nico Collins or whoever's number two will have number two, DBs on them. So maybe Nico Collins can be, that jump ball guy, that red zone target for the team. But Chris Conley also bigger guy, 6'3", getting up there in age a little bit maybe at 29 years old. But he's bounced around to a couple teams. He's never really been that number two target for any of the teams he's played on as of yet. With Kansas City his first 4 years, then with Jacksonville in 2019 and 2020, and then this past season with Houston. Never really showed that number two or even number three necessarily wide receiver spot. So last year only having 323 yards but two touchdowns. So Chris Conley can maybe be your touchdown upside guy, maybe that red zone target like I'm talking about. So both of these guys and Nico Collins and Chris Conley, similar guys, can get vertical, um, and are decent in the contested catch game, but maybe aren't your best route runners overall. And then your third guy that I talked about, Philip Dorsett, who's a shorter guy at 5'10", also 29 years old, like Chris Conley. He's definitely your speed guy, kind of like a Brandon Cooks, just your Walmart Brandon Cooks, not the route runner that Brandon Cooks is, not your contested catch guy that Brandon Cooks is. Um, but he's able to use his speed to get open, in the short game and also, get deep if he needs to. But former first round pick, he's bounced around as well. He's been with Indianapolis, he was with New England for, a few years, and then, bounced through a couple teams the past season. So we'll see what Philip Dorsett can do. But he's kind of unknown. We haven't seen him a lot recently, but I think it'll be a toss up between those three on who really gets that number two spot, and then Chris Moore being, also in that rotation, I guess, 29-year-old receiver, played with the Baltimore Ravens the first 4 years of his career, and just this last year came over and played with the Houston Texans with 227 yards and two touchdowns. So this will be an interesting group outside of Brandon Cooks. I'm not sure, who you could really call your number two. I mean, we'll see early on probably, but Priller, what are your thoughts here on these wide receivers? I mean, I listed four of them, so what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on these guys, and any of them stand out to you more than others?
Yeah, I think honestly, Nico Collins is gonna pull through on that wide receiver two spot. Just him being so young and the Texans kind of trusting in him, giving him. I mean, obviously he's shown what he's been able to do. I mean, putting up 450 yards. It's like obviously not what you're expecting in a second wide receiver, but if you look onto the other guy you talked about, Chris Conley, I mean, he only put up 300 yards, and I'm not like really a yard guy, but that just shows that I mean, Nico Collins has been able to do something with the ball more than what Chris Conley has been able to do. So I think Nico Collins being young, obviously, I think that big guy, like that contested catch guy, I think that we could see him kind of develop into that wide receiver two role for the Texans. And yeah, so I think they're gonna roll with him at the two. Obviously, I'm gonna touch on his age one more time. 23 years old, still a very young guy. So I think they're gonna mold him into the receiver they want him to be at that number two spot. Now, Chris Conley and Philip Dorsett, obviously, I think are gonna have more of a battle for that third wide receiver spot. I don't know how much they're gonna be running through wide receivers on the field or whatnot, but Chris Conley, obviously, both these guys are old, 29 years old. So but they both do different things. So I think in different sets, I think we might see obviously they might interchange. So Chris Conley might be that more guy when you want to get like more of a deep threat type stuff down the field, being 6'3", touched on him again with his bigger body. So he might be more of those contested catches with that third wide receiver spot. But then Philip Dorsett might be your guy that you might come in with when you need a few yards and you need that like more secure catcher. Being 5'10", he's probably just like a little bit obviously a Walmart brand Brandon Cooks. He might be that little bit route runner that's probably better than Chris Conley. So that's kind of how I see the Texans running their offense with these wide receivers. So I mean, not really much to talk about with these bottom or these last two receivers, Chris Conley and Philip Dorsett. And I really just want to hit hard on Nico Collins kind of being the star of this bottom three wide receivers real quick right here.
Yeah, I think Nico Collins has the highest upside out of all these guys. So if he can hit that upside and use his youth as an advantage, I definitely think he's capable of taking over that number two spot. You got a couple other guys, Connor Weddington, Chad Beebe, Jalen Camp, and then obviously John Mechie. Unfortunately, will be out this season. Second round pick this year out of Alabama. Was diagnosed with
Yeah,
acute I'm not even going to try leukemia, and will not be playing football this season. So unfortunate for that, because obviously, second round pick John Mechie there was super super solid in college with Alabama, and you were hoping to have
yeah,
him year one, but he'll be back in the future, most
definitely.
likely at
I
a pretty
definitely
high
could have seen
level.
him stepping in at that wide receiver three spot.
Yeah, he
And then
he definitely could have been a huge part of this offense if he was playing, but
yeah,
unfortunate
I think they would
circumstances.
have. Yeah, I
So we'll move
think they
on with
would
the
have
tight
believed in him more.
ends. We'll move on with the tight ends, and I believe, this is going to be a rough tight end group as well as the wide receivers outside of Brandon Cooks. So I think your wide receiver or your tight end one, excuse me, is probably going to be Brevin Jordan. I think he's the highest upside guy you have here in this group. He's definitely not your prototypical tight end. He's almost like a kind of wide receiver.
Wide receiver.
Shorter guy, 6'3", so not your huge tight end size that you're looking at, but drafted last year in the fifth round out of Miami. Still a super young guy at 22 years old. Didn't have the production you're looking for with only 20 catches for 178 yards, but 3 touchdowns is pretty good considering only 20 catches and 3 of them for touchdowns. That's pretty nice. So he'll have that touchdown upside, but definitely a faster guy, a mismatch problem. He's just looking to get that playing time, that production out because he didn't show it this past season. So maybe with a full off season with the team being extra time with Davis Mills, he can maybe get that connection going. But I think Brevin Jordan's going to be your tight end one here for sure. And then your next couple guys, you have I'm going to try this out here. Tegan Quitoranio, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not going to act
Yeah, I
like I
think you
said
got
that
that
correct,
right.
but I tried. The fifth round pick this year in 2022 out of Oregon State. Your bigger body tight end at 6'6", 22 years old, so super young, rookie guy. We'll see how he works out. He's more your sure-handed guy, but neither one of those two guys that I've talked about, Brevin Jordan or Tegan, we'll go Tegan Q for now, are your run blocker types. They're more pass catchers, and I think Brevin Jordan's gonna get that number one spot. And then your third guy or second guy, whatever you wanna slot him in at, is Pharaoh Brown. Another big guy, 6'6", 258. A little bit older, 28 years old. He's been in the league for a couple seasons now. Never really put up big numbers, but he's going to be probably more of that run blocker. So maybe in more on early downs, and then Brevin Jordan can come in, on passing downs. But we'll see how they kind of rotate these guys in. It shouldn't be a great group here, but I think Brevin Jordan has upside. He's super fast, super athletic. It's just he needs to get that production up, and I think with this full off season with Davis Mills as the QB1, getting that chemistry with him might be a good thing, and you might see an uptick in Brevin Jordan's production this coming season. So, what are your thoughts here on the main three tight ends here going into 2022?
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Brevin Jordan kind of being that starter. Obviously, they're pretty high on him, drafting him last year. I think he'll be that kind of. You kind of mentioned how he's kind of a wide receiver. I mean, we've been seeing this with tight ends, where these tight ends are kind of shorter. They're the more faster end tight ends, and I think that's what we're kind of seeing here. We're gonna have like this tight end that's kind of gonna get after it, kind of be that wide receiver. Obviously, not going to be down in those early downs, run blocking for this team, but I think we could see him definitely out, like spread out. You know what I mean, stretching that defense out. He's not a horrible tight end. Obviously, you kind of touched on his production. Obviously, not really having that great of production, but I mean, there's still upside in him being so young. So I definitely think Brevin Jordan could turn this tight end room around. But honestly, as a number two tight end, I think I'm gonna have to throw in Pharaoh Brown there, just because he kind of has that experience that I think the Texans kind of need, being 28 years old and playing more games than obviously both these two guys combined. I think he brings that experience and that run blocking that this tight end room is missing. And obviously, a bigger guy, 6'6", 250. You're kind of expecting him to be your sure-handed target when you're on the field, and I think Pharaoh Brown honestly probably can do that for this team. But you kind of touched on Teagan Q. I definitely think they drafted him to kind of replace Pharaoh Brown in that situation because I mean he's the same height and same weight as Pharaoh Brown. So I think they're gonna kind of mold Teagan into that Pharaoh Brown look that they kind of wanted Pharaoh Brown to be. And I think this like duo in Brevin Jordan and Teagan, this young duo that they got building here, I think this definitely could be an an underrated tight end room if these guys turn out. Obviously, a huge upside with these two very young tight ends.
Yeah, for sure, and they'll have room to grow with a young quarterback in Davis Mills. So we'll definitely see an interesting group here that we don't know a ton about right now, but we'll be able to tell pretty early on who's getting the most of the action at that tight end spot. So we'll jump into the offensive line now. You definitely have your best guy on the offensive line, that being Mr. Laramie Tunsil, who obviously was in that blockbuster trade with the Miami Dolphins a few years back. He's your highest paid player at a 3-year, $66 million contract. He's maybe your best player outside of Brandon Cooks. I mean, you could go interchangeable with those guys. Still a pretty young guy at 28 years old, so in the prime of his career. He's one of the top left tackles in the league, in my opinion. Super solid. Not a lot that you can say bad about Laramie Tunsil. He's good in the run game, good in the pass game. Big guy, can move if he needs to. Super solid. And then, I'll go, he was left tackle. I'll go left to right. Left guard, you have the rookie Kenyon Green, most likely. The first round pick out of Texas A&M, 15th overall. Um, he's been a little bit questionable in training camp, missing a couple practices as of late, but hopefully he's out there week one to start. You have Justin Britt at center, getting a little bit up in age, but he's been pretty solid throughout his career. You have AJ Cann at right guard again. 30-year-old guy. He's a veteran. He's a power guy on the inside at right guard, and he's pretty solid. And then you have Titus Howard over at right tackle, who's been a little bit shaky, but former first-round pick, still has upside. Still only 26 years old. So it's a young group overall. I think Laramie Tunsil's your definite best offensive lineman, and then Kenyon Green definitely has the upside to be your your really solid piece to you know bolster up that left side of the line. Super young guy, 21 years old out of Texas A&M. Maybe not the best pass protector coming out, but this guy's going to be able to run people over and clear a bunch of holes in the run game. So, those are your main two guys. The rest of the guys are all right. Nothing crazy, nothing special there. But I think the left side of your line could be a strong point here. So, Perler, what do you think about the offensive line here in Houston? What are your thoughts on these guys?
They obviously lost Marcus Cannon, who was their right tackle, and then they moved their left guard Titus Howard over to right tackle. So it's going to be an interesting move that they're going to make. We'll see how this works out with their right or left guard coming in to play right tackle. But yeah, Kenyon Green, just touching on his, you kind of mentioned him missing some practices in preseason. Obviously, it might not be a huge thing, but something to note. So right now they have it listed as Justin McCray kind of starting, but you never know. Obviously, them focusing on their offensive line, bringing using their a high pick on Kenyon Green, that's very important. So I think with them kind of building their offensive line with Kenyon Green and Titus Howard moving over to right tackle, this could be an interesting thing to protect a young Davis Mills.
Yeah, it should be like I said, a pretty young group overall, so interesting to see what they can do, and hopefully Kenyon Green can get to that upside that I touched on a little bit, but only time will tell. But you have that Laramie Tunsil, that anchor on the left tackle spot to protect your quarterback. He's gonna be, you know, a superstar. So you're pretty confident in his ability, and the rest of the guys kind of just need to fill in. And they're more of a run blocking group outside of Laramie Tunsil, anyways. So if you know Davis Mills can get the ball out quick, and you can get some good run holes, run gaps with the rest
Yeah,
of
I
these
mean,
guys, it
hold
should
on,
be pretty solid. Go ahead.
just to touch on because I kind of been talking about this. Kind of been touching on this throughout the podcast when we talk about these teams. Davis Mills been sacked 31 times. Obviously, that's kind of like towards the top of the group, or like I mean, like the top half of the NFL getting sacked a lot. So obviously, hopefully, bringing in Kenyon Green with this first round pick this year, hopefully that can solidify his offensive line.
Yeah, for sure. So, we'll recap the whole offense here. I think it's going to be a struggle overall. Not a lot of playmakers necessarily on the offensive side. Brandon Cooks obviously is your superstar here. He's your best player. Him and Laramie Tunsil are going to be the best guys on the entire team. But I think, when you're looking for production offensively, it's going to go through Brandon Cooks. So if he's struggling, the offense is going to be struggling as a whole. And Marlon Mack can be a guy that can make plays and produce a little bit, but I think overall you have youth here, you have a little bit of upside, but this is going to be a bottom of the barrel offensive unit as a whole, and I think it'll be a struggle for these guys. And Levy Smith isn't an offensive guy, so we'll see what he can do as the head coach here in Houston. But I think this will be a tough situation overall offensively.
Yeah, I mean, not only not having like that great of pieces, not really having that young of pieces. Obviously, with John Michie being injured or like having diagnosed with that horrible disease, it could be a problem. But obviously, not the youngest team that we're looking for. Definitely, you kind of touched on it, bottom of the barrel team. Definitely a bottom three team in the NFL this season. Hopefully, tank for that high pick, maybe draft a nice QB, franchise quarterback to really skyrocket this team in the next season. But this season, definitely not a group that you're really looking at to be like have highlights or anything, unless it's coming from obviously Brandon Cooks. So, I mean, not really much to say about this team besides hope for a tank for a high pick next year.
Yeah, there's a lot of holes here, so it might take more than 1 year. It might take more than a couple. We'll see how they can make things work here. But yeah, it'll be a rough 2022 most likely for the Houston Texans offensively. But we're gonna take a quick break before we hop into the defensive side of the ball. So make sure you stay tuned. We'll be right back after a quick message. So stay tuned. And thank you for listening to the Underground Football Podcast.
Hey guys, I'm your co-host Priller. Go check us out on TikTok at UFPod, where we post updates on the latest news in the NFL and where we post original creative content daily. Thanks for listening to this short ad. Now let's get back to talking football.
Welcome back to the Underground Football Podcast. We're going over the 2022 Houston Texans. We're previewing their entire team, top to bottom. We're going to start here with the defense. We're going to go with the edge pass rushing group here, headlined by your main two guys being Jonathan Greenard and Jerry Hughes. Jonathan Greenard being that younger guy, 25 years old, former third round pick in 2020 out of Florida. He's produced pretty well his first couple seasons, so he's kind of your upside guy this season, having 8 sacks in 2021. So nice guy to come off the edge. Definitely, that fast guy, speed rushing moves around the edge. Maybe not the biggest guy at 263, but uses his speed to get around the edge and get after the quarterback. And then Jerry Hughes as well, a little bit older, getting up there in age. Obviously, was with the Bills for most of his career. Started off in Indianapolis and then was with the Bills for the majority of his tenure in the NFL, but getting up there in age a little bit at 33 years old. But he's a veteran presence, and he's shown that he can be a pretty solid guy even at a decent age. So this will be a decent duo. I think Jonathan Greenard's definitely your number one guy, and then Jerry Hughes will be on the other side. Maybe in a little bit more of a rotation, but you have guys like Rasheem Green as well coming over from Seattle, who I know you probably got a little bit on, but 6.5 sacks in 2021 is pretty solid. And then Mario Addison also coming over from Buffalo. So Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison maybe got a little bit of chemistry together. Both both older guys, 33 and 34 for those two. And again, Mario Addison with 7 sacks this past season. So this will be an interesting group. I think you get a decent amount of production from these guys for not really having your number one or your number two or anything like that. Um, you also have, and I'll try this here, um, Ogbonia Okoronkwo. I totally probably butchered that. I tried. But he'll be in the rotation as well. A younger guy, 27 years old. Um, and he's shown a little bit of flashes, maybe not the production that some of these other guys have had, but he'll be in the rotation as well. So there's going to be a decent group here, rotating in and out, and hopefully you're getting out of all of these guys. Hopefully you're getting at least a decent amount of production with so many guys in rotation. So what are your thoughts initially on just the edge group, the pass rushers coming off the edge to sack these opposing quarterbacks?
I'm gonna start with Jonathan Greenard. Yeah, obviously, I think he's that upside guy for this group. 25 years old, still young in that edge rushing category. Definitely had a productive season last season, having 8 sacks. You kind of touched on that. Definitely what you're kind of looking at for a Texan. You kind of want that guy that's gonna have your production. Obviously, we're hoping that more of these guys will obviously help Jonathan Greenard out and produce well. But bringing in a guy like Jerry Hughes, I think he was kind of obviously not the best. He's been in the league for a little while, being 33 years old. Definitely at his end of the line right here. Maybe hanging up his cleats pretty soon here. But obviously you're bringing him in. Hopefully bring some experience to some of these younger guys, and you're hoping that he has some production. But kind of go into another kind of younger guy, Rasheem Green. Mentioned him coming over from Seattle. I know Seattle was kind of pissed off about losing this guy, but Obviously, I think the Texans kind of got an underrated signing here. He's shown that when Seattle kind of gave him more responsibility coming in on that defensive line, he's been able to produce a little bit of higher numbers, having 6.5 sacks last season. Hopefully, we see him do something like that, maybe getting in on that right side of the defensive line, taking over Jerry Hughes because he's kind of that younger guy. Hopefully, seeing him get some more responsibility on this Texans defensive line, like he got on Seattle's defensive line, and maybe showing why he got paid what he got paid. So yeah, I mean, obviously not the greatest defensive line unit in this division, but definitely not horrible. I mean, it's kind of hard to judge on what they're going to do. Obviously, bringing in Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison, we don't know what they're going to do on this defensive line, but I think this defensive line is not the greatest, but it's not the worst in the league.
Yeah, they'll get the job done. They've produced pretty well as a group, so most of these guys are pretty fast guys getting around the edge. Not going to overpower you necessarily. Not a lot of big guys here on this defensive line. I'd say your biggest guy is definitely Rasheem Green at 279 pounds, 6'4". So maybe look for him to be more of your power guy off the edge, and then the rest of these guys going to be, not as great in run defense and not as super strong and powerful, but getting around the edge using that bend to get on the outside, contain quarterbacks, and get those sacks. So this will be a decent group overall. They'll have a pretty decent rotation. No superstars on the edge. I think Jonathan Greenard's definitely a rising star in this league. He can definitely grow into a bigger role, but as of right now, no superstars. This will be a rotation, but a decent rotation at that. So we'll move on to the defensive tackles here, the interior guys. Your main guys are going to be Malik Collins, and I would think Ross Blacklock would be basically your number two, but Malik Collins will be your number one guy. It's a 4-3 defense, so two of these guys will be on the field most of the time. But Malik Collins, maybe not, that stellar, pass rusher, but super good in run defense. And he'll get after the passer too. 2.5 sacks this past season, and he's bounced around to a couple teams with Dallas, with Vegas, now with Houston in 2021 and 2022. And Ross Blacklock, the young guy, 24 years old, 2020 second round pick to the Houston Texans. You haven't seen a ton of production out of him, but he's got the potential to be a solid number two guy. Um, Again, not the biggest guy, similar to the edge guys, maybe not the best run defender, but he'll get after the passer a decent amount. Roy Lopez will also be in the rotation. Sixth round pick in 2021, 25 years old, so another young guy getting after the passer from the inside. And it'll be interesting to see what these three guys can do. I think definitely your edge is stronger than your interior. Malik Collins is a nice piece to have on the inside, but outside of him, you're looking for these younger guys to kind of take that step up, and they haven't as of yet. So it'll be interesting to see if they can grow into what you're hoping. But as of right now, you're not super excited. And I'll just touch on Thomas Booker, the fifth round pick this year in 2022 out of Stanford. Another young guy that has potential to grow into something, but we'll see how things start out pretty early on how these guys are gonna work together in that rotation.
Yeah, something to add on that. I definitely could see Rasheem Green kind of coming in because you kind of touched on him being that bigger body, 6'4", 280. I definitely could see Rasheem Green kind of coming in on maybe a pass down. I mean, yeah, like a third down, third and long, coming in and kind of taking over some of these bigger guys and kind of getting after the passer more. But yeah, Malik Collins, you kind of touched on him. 27 years old. I mean, not the greatest, but not the worst. I mean, you're just kind of looking to him to just basically stop the run. And I think Blacklock, how you kind of mentioned, he's that younger guy, second round pick. You're kind of hoping more production out of him this season. But yeah, I think you really touched hard on that defensive tackle group. So I'm not really going to go too much in depth and repeat what you said.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not a ton to be said about these guys. No one's really going to be, you know, producing a ton, and most of your production is going to come from these edge guys. So we'll jump into the linebackers, who again have a bit of a rotation going. I think your main guy here is going to be your middle linebacker in Christian Kirksey. Um, Coming over, he's bounced around to a couple teams now, but he had a decent season with Houston this past season. Started off in Cleveland and played a bunch there. Was a pretty solid maybe not your number one linebacker for some of those years, but as he went on, getting around the 150 total tackle range, 100 solos. So he's definitely a ball not a ball hawk, but he's got good pursuit in the run game. Not your best run defender though, but a bigger guy that can fill gaps and thump a guy coming over, or a running back coming into the middle of the field. Um, and then you have Camus Grugier-Hill, who's going to be at probably an off-ball linebacker spot, coming over from Philadelphia and Miami just this past season. Got a couple sacks in there, two forced fumbles, three sacks, an interception, and two forced fumbles. So he's been around the ball definitely for sure. Um, both of these guys around 28, 29 years old, so not your youngest guys, but they'll be solid out there. And then you have Kevin Pierre-Louis will be on the other off-ball linebacker spot. So definitely a veteran group here for linebackers. I don't know what we'll see out of Kevin Pierre-Louis. He didn't have a great season this past season, but you do bring in the young guy Christian Harris, third-round pick out of Alabama in 2022, just this past season. So we'll see probably him get a good amount of playing time at the linebacker spot as well. But I think Christian Kirksey and Camus Grugier-Hill are going to be your main two, with Christian Harris coming in on those earlier downs and Kevin Pierre-Louis also in that rotation. So maybe not the best pass coverage group. I think Camus Grugier-Hill is definitely the better of the two of the main guys. Christian Kirksey more of your run defender, but um, we'll see a pretty solid group here. Nothing too special, similar to your interior. Nothing crazy, no superstars so far on this defense. But it'll be a solid group overall at the linebacker spot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, headline you mentioned Christian Kirksey. I think he's definitely not. I think he is their best defensive middle linebacker or linebacker on this team. But yeah, obviously, just touch on it again. Those three guys you mentioned first, Camus Hill, Christian Kirksey, and Kevin Pierre-Louis. Those guys are all getting up there in age, and I mean, you don't really want to see that in your linebacking group. So I think them with bringing in Christian Harris, obviously the young buck, 21 years old. I think hopefully the Texans use him, and hopefully he can kind of grow into that team and kind of like have a way bigger role than some of these other guys on the team. Because it's always you always want your younger guys to kind of develop more. And I think if they just throw this guy in, I mean, 21 years old, third round pick, you don't really know what you're going to get out of him yet. So I think just kind of hopefully just throw him into the fire and see what happens. Hopefully you get a nice pick out of him. But yeah, you kind of touched on all these guys like talents and stuff like that. So I'm not going to go in depth about them. But I definitely Christian Kirksey is someone to keep eyeing on this season.
Yeah, and I'll touch on a couple of the other guys. So you have Neville Hewitt as well, 29 years old. Has bounced around mainly the AFC East with the Dolphins and the Jets beginning of his career, but now coming over to Houston. Never had a huge role, but been a nice rotational guy. And then Blake Cashman, a younger guy coming over from the New York Jets, who hasn't really been able to get on the field and stay on the field too long, but you know has that upside as a super fast guy in Blake Cashman, and we'll see if he can get more playing time here, but it'll be a crowded group, a lot of guys coming in and out constantly. So I don't really think you have your set guys here where you're super confident. But like you said, Christian Kirksey and I think Camus Grugier-Hill will be your main two guys in the linebacker room. So to jump
Yeah.
into the cornerbacks are probably a stronger point of this team in my opinion.
Mhm.
Obviously headlined by your first pick in the 2022 draft at number 3 overall, Derek Stingley Jr. out of LSU. This guy is going to hopefully come in and be what we saw out of him in college. He had some problems staying on the field, had that big injury, and then held out as well in 2020. So Derek Stingley will be kind of, an unknown a little bit, but when he was on the field, this guy was your best corner in the draft for a reason, your number one pick in the draft for a reason. So this guy is going to be a shutdown number one corner as long as he can stay on the field. Has good size at 6'1", super young, 21 years old, obviously, as a rookie, and then he'll be able to match up against any team's number one most likely. Great man-to-man guy, great zone guy. This should be your number one corner, barring anything crazy. And then you have the veteran Desmond King. I mean, I call him a veteran, but he's only 27 years old, but he's been in the league for a while now. He spent his first 4 seasons with the Chargers, went to Tennessee in 2020, and then had a season with Houston this past year. This guy is a another great corner to have. Probably going to be your slot guy here, but a nice guy to have. He's been around the league. He knows what you need to do. He's quick on his feet, has quick hands. Maybe not having the same size like a Derek Stingley to be that number one shutdown guy, but Desmond King's a solid guy to have around. And then you have Steven Nelson as well, 29 years old, coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles this past season, but he's been with the Chiefs and the Steelers as well. So Steven Nelson's been a solid guy as well. These guys are all, you know, you wouldn't be too mad at having any one of these guys be your number one or number two corner. So having three of these guys in rotation should be super nice. But Steven Nelson again, he'll be more on the outside than Desmond King, but a great guy in man, great guy in zone. These guys can all really do it all. They're not superstars necessarily, but Derek Stingley definitely has that potential to be your superstar alpha number one shutdown corner to take on whatever number one receiver the opposing team has and just shut him down for the entire game. So those are your main three guys. But Priller, what are your thoughts on the main three guys? And do you think so highly of Derek Stingley like I do, or are you one of these guys that are a little bit hesitant to give him that crown?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely am on that other side of the ball there. I think I don't know why they really chose him over a guy like Sauce. I think they probably should have chose Sauce over him. I mean, Derek Stingley kind of has more of that upside. I mean, you don't really know what you're getting out of this guy. Hopefully, you're getting what he was earlier on his college career. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think he's your prototypical. He's like a prototypical number one corner, shutdown corner. I think that he obviously has that potential to be that star guy that obviously of this Texans defense for many years to come, and I don't see them letting him go anytime soon. And so if Derek Stingley, if they can develop him right, he can definitely be one of those number one top corner talks that we might have coming onto this podcast. But I would like to jump into Steven Nelson. I mean, he's kind of like your man-to-man corner on that outside, and I kind of think this was a great addition to bring in the Texans. Obviously, you touched on Lovey Smith being that more defensive-minded coach. Um, I think this is a perfect addition for them, and hopefully it will like kind of like put more pressure on this defensive line to get pressure on the QB, so that way that these guys can create turnovers for this team. But yeah, I think their cornerback group is a pretty good group. I mean, jumping into Desmond King, obviously you mentioned him being that slot corner. I think definitely these corners, these three corners that I mentioned, are definitely not going to be a downfall of this team. I definitely think they can help this team win more games, if anything. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how these three guys kind of blend together and mesh together. But I mean, I'm hoping for a good season out of these three guys and a solid cornerback group.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of versatility out of Desmond King too. He's played safety as well in his career, so he can definitely be moved around and put wherever you need him. But I'll touch on a couple of these other guys. So you have Fabian Moreau, who is coming over from Atlanta, but had a pretty good career with the Washington football team, Commanders, whatever you want to call them. And did decent for Atlanta, so he'll be in there with the rotation, as well as Kendall Sheffield, also coming over from Atlanta. So these guys will have a little bit of a connection. Um, but both of them have produced at a pretty decent level, so neither one of these guys are any slouch as well. So I definitely think, when we look at this defense as a whole towards the end here of this episode, I think we'll look back on these corners and say this might be the strongest group, on this team, especially if Derek Stingley is able to get to that super high potential that we know he's capable of. So, it leans a lot on that, but I think this should be a very solid group overall, even if, Derek Stingley is just an all right guy. So, we'll hop into the safeties now, and these safeties, are definitely not as not as flashy as these corners. And I did touch on Desmond King being versatile, and he could drop back into a safety role if need be. If some of these corners definitely step up on the depth chart and are able to kind of shine. But I think your number one safety here is probably going to be Jalen Petrie, the third round or second round, excuse me, pick out of Baylor. 23 years old, coming over as a rookie. He should be, starting week one, I would think. He's going to be your free safety guy covering the middle of the field over top. Um, Not necessarily your run defending type of safety, has decent pursuit, but is good in coverage, good at covering the middle of the field, smart guy. So he'll uh he'll excuse me. I don't know what I'm saying. He'll roam the middle of the field. That's what I'm trying to say. And then you have kind of a rotation outside of him. Um, I would think Eric Murray would probably be, in the rotation on the other side, being more of that box guy, um, as well as Terrence Brooks and Jonathan Owens. Each and every one of the four guys that I just mentioned at 5'11", so not the biggest guys, but um, they're all versatile, can do different things, are quick on their feet, have quick hands, good pursuit, and are pretty solid in coverage. But I think Jalen Petrie definitely has the upside to be your number one safety here in Houston, and he'll be looking to fill that Justin Reed role that was lost with him going to Kansas City. So the safeties aren't going to be a strong point of this team, but if they're struggling immensely, slide a guy like Desmond King back and put him covering the deep middle of the field or in the box, and I think it can bolster up. So this is a group that can be versatile, can move guys around, has a bunch of different pieces, but it'll be interesting to see how the safeties can all mesh together and can get a rotation going, kind of similar to a lot of these position groups.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm gonna touch on Jalen Petrie first. That younger guy that they picked up this year. Obviously, they're hoping for him to be a great safety in this league. I mean, what else drafting him in the second round? Definitely has some potential to be a great safety in this league. I mean, 5'11", 200 pounds. I mean, that's kind of what you're looking for in a free safety. Hopefully he fills a role that they want him to fill. But now getting into Jonathan Owens, I mean, he sat behind Justin Reed. He was the guy that sat behind Justin Reed. So obviously this is their hole in their defense. I mean, they don't really have a good strong safety. Hopefully Jonathan Owens, obviously he won't be able to fill the complete role of Justin Reed, but hopefully he can obviously learn some tips and tricks from Jonathan Reed. Jonathan Owens or from Justin Reed, my bad. What did I say? But hopefully Jonathan Owens obviously can be that filler guy. Hopefully, I see them focusing on getting a strong safety, obviously in this next upcoming next year's draft. But you kind of mentioned them kind of filling in with Desmond King, kind of can drop back in that safety position. So, I mean, you say it's not really a strong suit. Hopefully, we see some upside in Jalen Petrie. But yeah, obviously, I'm kind of in agreement with it not being the greatest strong suit of their defense. But you never know. I mean, they can obviously grow.
Yeah, and so, to wrap up the entire defense here, I think your strongest point is going to be your corners. That's, you've got depth there, you've got that high level talent in Derek Stingley, so this will be a group that's going to be super solid. But outside of that, it's a rough defense. I think Jonathan Greenard off the edge is a pretty solid piece. Um, Christian Kirksey, in that run defense in the middle of the field should be nice, but it's a lot of guys that, if you look around and you're putting them on other teams, maybe they're not getting as much playing time. Maybe they're not in that starting role. So it's going to be a tough group. It's going to be, a rough season for these guys, but they should be able to get after the passer at a decent rate and then have pretty good coverage out of their corners. Um, but it's only time will tell how the run defense really works out. I think that could be a weak point of this team, and then the safeties over top, hopefully not, giving up too many big plays. So this defense will be rough, similar to the offense. This team overall isn't something crazy, but it'll be a group that can show flashes and can get after the passer, can cover guys downfield. It's just we need to see it out of them, and we haven't really seen that as of yet in the past couple seasons. So it'll be something that we kind of need to see before we believe it, but it's definitely there. And I think Derek Stingley Jr. is going to be a super important guy to have here for the future. And if he can turn into what you're hoping, that'll be a nice piece, to go on and on into years to come with, a shutdown number one corner, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of you kind of hit it all on the point. I definitely think this is. I definitely think the corners are definitely the strong suit of this defense. Maybe like I don't know, the linebacker group is kind of obviously headlined by one person, but I think maybe the defensive line group definitely has the second best potential to be good on this team. But yeah, I mean, they got some younger pieces. Obviously, they focus a little bit more on this draft on defense, clearly, with them bringing in Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie. and Christian Harris. But I think with the way they're going right now, if they build up this defense a little more, get some younger pieces, I think they definitely could be a pretty solid defensive group.
For sure, and we'll move on to the special teams here to wrap things up. Your kicker is going to be Kaimi Fairbairn. He's been here for a couple of years now. Maybe not your flashy kicker, but he gets the job done. He's around 80 to 85% career field goal percentage. This past season had a 61-yard field goal, so that's pretty nice as well. And then your punter is going to be Cameron Johnston, um, who is probably a top 10 punter in the league. Coming over from Philadelphia last year, doing a pretty good job. So they might be punting a decent amount. They might be kicking a decent amount. So having two guys that'll be able to get the job done at a pretty high rate will be nice.
Yeah, and just kind of jumping into their punt returner and kick returner. At punt returner, you got Desmond King the second. Yeah, obviously, he returned punts last year for them. He was kind of just like their fair catch guy. Didn't really do much after the catch, but that's what you need. You need someone who's just gonna basically be able to catch that ball. And at kick returner, they kind of have the opposite. They have Trayman Smith. This guy, I mean, he could take it back to the crib. Obviously, having a touchdown last season, you're kind of hoping for him to produce like that some more. So I think you could see more of this group. Special teams definitely could be more active this season, and hopefully it could be a bright side for this team, not a weakness.
Yeah, I think when you look at the whole roster up and down, special teams doesn't look too bad. So it'll be a group here. We'll see how they can do, but we'll wrap up the whole team here to end this episode. Overall the Houston Texans. I don't think either one of us are very high on these guys going into 2022. I think you're looking at a bottom five team here pretty easily. I think you're looking at your most important positions at quarterback and offensive line and wide receiver, and then even defensively, those edge rushers and guys like these aren't. You don't have any superstars on this entire team up and down. Maybe Brandon Cooks, maybe Laramie Tunsil, but even then it's debatable. Um, and you don't have a lot of depth. So, there's youth starting to enter the equation with this team, but even then, I mean, it's going to be a rough season, I think, for the Houston Texans. I think they'll have a high pick in the draft. Maybe they go QB. You never know. We'll see. But there's a lot of holes up and down this roster, in my opinion, and I think you're looking at a pretty rough season upcoming for the Houston Texans here in 2022.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. Definitely, as a Texans fan, you're probably hoping to tank a little bit, not really hoping for those wins, trying to get that great piece, that top five pick. Obviously, I don't think with that being said, obviously, I don't think this team is gonna be that highlight team. I don't think many people are going to be turning on their games. So Houston Texans, obviously, you kind of touched on bottom five team. I mean, I would even say bottom three. I mean, I don't think they have a chance this season. But yeah, I mean, they kind of said it, sums it up well. This team's not that great overall. Obviously, you touched their youth is starting to enter the equation. So obviously, they're kind of bringing more. They're obviously getting smarter with their picks. Is basically what I'm saying because these younger guys are staying on their teams, stuff like that. So hopefully, with this next draft, hopefully they keep on drafting younger guys, obviously, and keep drafting some people that can obviously stay on this team and maybe even turn this whole franchise around.
Yeah, and I think, you're now able to start going in the right direction. Now, this being the first year you've had a first round pick since I think 2019.
Yeah,
So definitely, it's been a struggle having such a, poor roster as well as not having any first round picks or second rounds for that matter. It's been rough, but I think, this team can finally get on the right track. And ever since losing Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, this team has kind of just been in a downward
JJ Watt.
spiral. But yeah, I forgot to mention JJ Watt. But I think they're on the up and up. This team definitely has maybe not taking a huge step in the right direction, but the youth aspect is a pretty nice thing to see. And I think Derek Stingley was a good pick overall. I think Jalen Petrie will be a nice piece. I think Christian Harris will be nice. You get two first round picks with another guy in Kenyon Green. So, there's youth being added to this team. And, you're not paying any insane contracts. You're not making any crazy trades, hopefully, for the rest of this season, but they haven't made any yet so far. So, keep things on the right track. You got a bunch of draft capital coming in from the Deshaun Watson trade, so get this team on the right track, keep it moving, and keep getting youth in the building. And I think this team can, continue to look better and better as seasons go on. But again, to wrap it up, 2022 for the Houston Texans probably isn't going to be a great year.
Yeah,
So,
no, definitely,
on
definitely
behalf
think that.
of my co-host Jack Priller, I'm Mike Maynard. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast today about the Houston Texans. Sorry it couldn't be a better episode. We're both sounding a little down, a little sad, but this is a rough team to talk about. They got some pieces here and there, but overall, it's going to be a tough season. So, thank you so much for listening to our episode here. Make sure to stay tuned. We'll have the rest of the NFL coming out where we do this preview of the team over, the coming weeks. So, stay tuned. Keep listening, and thank you so much for being here. But yeah, we'll see you next time on the Underground Football Podcast.